Thank you, Commissioner Cohen. Good afternoon. The board meeting of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey and its component units is now being called to order. Due to challenges related to the ongoing COVID-19 public health crisis, in-person attendance in today's meeting will be limited to commissioners and Port Authority staff required to conduct the meeting and credentialed members of the media, subject to the capacity limitations. For all others, the meeting is being held virtually via teleconference with the proceedings live streamed from the Port Authority website. On October 13th, the Committees of Finance and Operations met jointly in public session. Earlier today, the Committee on Finance met in public session. The Committee on Capital Planning, Execution, and Asset Management met in executive session. The Committees on Finance and Audit met jointly in executive session. And the Committees on Finance and Operations met jointly in executive session. Their reports will be filed with the official minutes of today's board meeting. The Commissioners also met in executive session earlier today to discuss matters involving ongoing negotiations or reviews of contracts or proposals, matters related to proposed, pending, or current litigation, or judicial or administrative proceedings, and matters related to personnel and personnel procedures. I now request that our Executive Director provide his monthly report. Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Across our facilities, our most recent activity volumes remain a tale of two worlds. On the one hand, vehicular activity at the tunnels and bridges exceeded by a small amount, actually, pre-COVID levels last week. And the seaport has now marked record volumes 13 months in a row. But on the other hand, the airports and PATH continue to make a much slower recovery, with PATH still down more than half of its pre-COVID ridership and airport passenger volume still down by a third. Turning to our workforce, following protocols implemented by both New York and New Jersey, the agency has now instituted a weekly testing protocol for unvaccinated employees. We also remain committed to the health and safety of the traveling public in addition to our employees. The Port Authority's facilities, I'm pleased to report, continue to operate at a very high standard, and the agency will, of course, continue to follow the latest public health guidance from New York and New Jersey. And we continue to be profoundly grateful to all our Port Authority employees for their dedication and extraordinary hard work. I know I say that each month, but you cannot fail to be impressed as you move through our facilities at the continuing and consistently high level of our employees, and I once again express profound thanks to them. And as I also emphasize, we are grateful to the leaders of the 23 unions that represent the majority of our employees. You just heard the CFO report on our third quarter financials. The agency delivered a very solid financial performance in Q3. The agency staff has worked hard to stay within the 2021 austerity budget, and they have achieved it across the board. I want to again thank them for their efforts. And I remind the board that our capital spending for this year was budgeted at 1/3 below what had been planned pre-COVID in light of the agency's lower COVID-impacted revenues for 2021. These remain challenging times. A little more detail on the latest activity levels at our facilities. For the week of October 11th to 17th, passenger volumes at the airports were down 32.5% compared to the pre-COVID October 2019 average. Since August, passenger volumes at the airports have remained roughly between 30 and 40% down compared to pre-COVID 2019 levels. For the week of October 11th to 17th, PATH ridership was down 55.8% compared to the pre-COVID October 2019 average. Though still down by more than half, ridership on PATH has increased, a bit modestly, but has increased in the past weeks from the 62% it was down in August, but an important tick up. At the bridges and tunnels for the week of 11th to the 17th of October, vehicular crossings at the 4 bridges and 2 tunnels actually exceeded pre-COVID levels, up 1.1% compared to the pre-COVID October 2019 average. At the seaport, in September 2021, volumes at the seaport were up 15.9% compared to September 2019. This marks the highest ever September volume for the port and the 13th consecutive month of record-setting volumes. And as you will hear shortly from our director of the seaport has handled this flood of cargo without the congestion that is being experienced at other ports. The continuing low levels at PATH and the airports, even as the bridges and tunnels return to pre-COVID levels and the seaport marks record volumes, continue to seriously impact both our operating revenues and our capital capacity. Our estimate of $3 billion in lost revenue from Q2 2020 to Q1 2022 remains firm. In the past 30 days, with respect to COVID-19 impacts on our workforce, 49 employees reported positive test results for COVID-19, down, I'm pleased to say, from 75 last month. There are currently 114 employees in self-quarantine, down from 138 a month ago, a positive trend. As I said earlier, following the lead of New York and New Jersey, the agency has now implemented mandatory COVID-19 testing programs for employees who are not vaccinated. Also in connection with COVID-19, our mask enforcement efforts. Since the start of the pandemic, the Port Authority Police have made more than 126,000 passenger contacts regarding mask wearing, has issued 120 summonses and made 15 arrests. 7,300 of those passenger contacts have occurred in the last 30 days, and 42 summonses have been issued over the last 30 days. The agency has also handed out more than 2.5 million masks at our facilities over the course of the pandemic. Final item in my report today is with respect to the AirTrain LaGuardia. As you know, Governor Hochul has requested a review of potential alternative mass transit options to LaGuardia Airport. The agency has begun to plan that review following our public announcement last week that the AirTrain project will be on pause until that review is completed and submitted to the governor. Our plan is to carry out this review as expeditiously as possible, consistent with our commitment to carry it out at the absolutely highest level of quality. We will consult with outside experts and stakeholders as we carry out this review. All elements of the review are currently under development and are part of the planning process for the overall review. With that, Mr. Chairman, I conclude my report.
Thank you, Mr. Executive Director. Any comments or questions from the commissioners? Anyone? Rick, let me just say a couple things. Having lived through, as we all did, the pandemic from March of 2020 to present day, and for the most part, we've had to just manage the gloom factor. And it seems now, and that we're starting to pick up this point of optimism. When you talk to whether the quarantines are down, vaccinations up, and talk about points of traffic, certainly the port itself is just off the charts, but when you look at PATH, incremental, it's getting better. Anecdotally, folks who are getting on the 710 are telling me it's really just getting much more full. You're seeing the airports are coming back. International is getting a green light come November, December. It just seems to me that the Port Authority, by and large, is starting to take the corner in a very positive way. It seems like the projects we have underway at the airports in particular, and some of the rehabilitation we're doing, seems to be making its headway, notwithstanding the pandemic. And as you look around, the employees that we have throughout our agencies are starting to come back, whether it's limited in 2 or 3 days or some are coming even more. It just seems to me that we're starting to see life come back pre-COVID, and knock on wood and all those other things, but we are starting to have some sense of back to normal, whatever that is, the new normal, so to speak. But when I hear your report, I am filled with optimism. I look forward to seeing those numbers, those positive numbers, grow in November and December. Along those lines, before we get into the positive note, Sam Ruda, let me just say that at the December meeting, I'd like to have and I'll say this to James Allen, to Peter, I'd like to have a full viewing of all the activities that have encompassed this centennial year. We've seen, and it's been a little hard to keep track of it all because of this COVID era that we're living in. But there's been an enormous amount, as you know, Executive Director, because you have headed it up, enormous amounts of work done by our Port Authority employees to showcase the very best of the Port Authority for the last 100 years. And I just want to have the public and all the staff know come December, every point that we've actually hit on, whether it's academic, whether it's celebratory, whether it's recognition-wise. There are so many things that, whether it's the book that was put together, the Centennial Dinner, and on and on and on. I just want to have the public be given a full flavor of what we have experienced and how we have celebrated, albeit a little unconventionally. And at this time, and I hope I don't miss anybody, to the commissioners, first of all, I want to thank Rick, who has just headed up literally the centennial efforts over this last year. Extraordinary effort to try to put a happy face on sometimes a gloomy front that we've all had to manage. But having done all that, I think we all kind of hit the right tones and celebrating 100 years as it should be, celebrating the agency and its greatness and celebrating the employees and their greatness. So Rick, thank you very much for that amazing leadership. And I want to thank we formed a committee, Commissioners Committee, which Vice Chair Linford, thank you very much for doing a lot of the work, working particularly close with Peter Simon and James Allen, and I want to thank Commissioner Eve and Commissioner McCabe for being part of that commission to help put a direction. And Vice Chair Linford, I'm sure you'll add some comments to this, but we do want to thank the RPA for really running point on the dinner. We had different ideas about having our own dinner, not having a centennial dinner, and the RPA, I thought, did an exceptional job. Those people who experienced the dinner, it was just well done, extraordinarily tasteful, elegant, and it's something that both governors came and delivered excellent comments. A lot of the rank and file came and had some really meaningful things to say, and for those who didn't see it, I know I said it before, Lillian and you in particular had just gave the most stirring introduction, which I was very jealous of, just saying without hint of notes or script, you were amazing in what you said, and what you said spoke for all the current employees, and for the 99 years before you spoke for everyone, Lillian. So thank you very much for that beautiful, the words and poetry you talked about. Thank you. And to the actual staff, and I'm going to take the time because it's worth it. And if we missed anybody, I blame Peter and Ben and James Allen. And we will come back in December to cite those people we've missed. But I have to thank first Alfred Doblin, who took the point with our committee. Very difficult working for me and Peter and James in particular. Alfred took it all on his shoulders and did so much, some seen, some unseen. And Alfred, a special thank you for extraordinary work. We've already said thank you to Peter and James. And Ben, I don't want to get your heads too full, but I will tell you candidly, you three have really run it. James, Allen, Peter, for many, many years have just done a lot of things for both the executive director, the commissioners, and obviously my office, and you've done it together, and Ben, you've added great weight to it. So the three of you, thank you very much for doing things to kind of coordinate the executive director's office, commissioner's office, my office, and kind of diffuse the message out in one singular voice to the authority. Job well done. Let me just say, and I have to read, and I'm going to mangle some of these. Under the Leadership Fellow, Chase Palmer, will not mangle that one. I want to thank you. Under Human Capital, Lindsay Steinbeck. Maria, if someone could help me with this name, would be great. Any help on this, Peter? Skopecki?
No, sir. Spokane.
Say it again?
Spokane.
Okay, that was Huntley if you got it wrong. All right, thank you. Under Procurement, Lillian, thank you very much for you and all of your staff. Luke Bassis, Shanta Nelson, Nancy Ubilla, Celine Ortega, and Joanne Spirito, James Somerville. Got it right. James McCoy, thank you very much for being very much a part of front and center of this. And Christine Romeo, Office of Communications. Obviously, Ben Branham did an awful lot. Ben, thank you very much for coordinating umpteenth amount of press communications that were just far too numerous to even get into. Jimmy Diaz, Theory Dumolf. I know I screwed that one up. Huntley, can you help out on that one? Joe Green, Dave Compton, if you can help me, be great. Heather Farrow, and in legal, Veronica Rodriguez, and Rhea Lettern. Michael? Thank you. TB&T, Elizabeth Broder, Path Carell DeGraff, and Morgan Kane. Morgan left us for some reason, but we have to give her credit. Is that right, Rick? She's She's still carrying the ball and doing great work. Aviation Huntley, thank you very much. Obviously, Mr. Everything, appreciate it. Pasquale DeFalco and James Gill. Ports Sam Ruda, thank you. Beth Rooney, terrific. World Trade Center Committee, Derek Hudspeth, Kelly Zarro, and if anyone wants to correct me, feel free to jump in. Elizabeth Spekowitz, Kelly Rowland, Ariana Kane, Melissa Abreu, Danette Carl, Yolene Yates, and Alan Rice, clearly. Stephen Plate and Michael Donovan from helping with the Centennial Plaque. And you've probably heard this name once or twice in Para, Karen Eastman, who served here. Jim, how many years was she here? 40 years?
Yes, fairly certain to the day.
Karen has just been amazing, heading up the retired Port Authority Employees Organization. And the other individuals, Lou Vench, Maria Malone Hodges, Ray Ann Hoffman, and I think that really just finished out the list. But to all the employees who helped out, who made everybody collectively just added something. And I'm telling you, it's been a beautiful year in many ways. To celebrate this 100 years together in these difficult times just required the effort and minds and intellect of everybody, all 8,000 employees. So I want to say thank you and thank you and thank you. And we'll have a fuller briefing in December in terms of the actual programs, which are just amazing.
Mr. Chairman?
Vice Chair, I'm sorry, I'm just no longer filibustering. Please jump in.
Well, I wanted to add one additional shout out
Yes.
to our chairman, whose oratory reached new heights. And I think everyone that listened to you, I even heard someone compare you to Martin Luther King Jr. I think that is a great praise. So thank you for your leadership and your oratory. And I turn the chair back to you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you very much. So at this time, we're going to turn to Sam Ruda and talk about some of the interesting topics. And we've seen over the last, I guess, couple of weeks, Rick, we've seen countless amounts of newscasts who've talked about shortages and port management. And we've talked about, the West Coast has had significant problems. And I know some of the media have caught in that all ports have been kind of caught up in this logjam where there's a 2 or 3 week wait on some of the ships that just can't get loaded and unloaded. But Sam's going to tell us how you, Sam, and to you and to all of your employees, Sam, remarkable. You're going to walk us through why you've been able to manage this load. And I think the most we've had to wait is maybe a day and a half, as opposed to the 11-day average on some of the West Coast ports. But Sam, on behalf of all the commissioners and obviously the executive director, tell each of your employees and each of the union members of Longshoremen, all of those folks, say we thank you very much for shining in a very difficult moment. So that's your lead, and please present how we're doing at the port.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Well, good afternoon, Commissioners. Today, I want to provide you with an update on how the Port of New York and New Jersey is effectively managing record container volumes through the gateway. As has been well publicized in the media, including a port and supply chain forum held at the White House last week, container volumes moving through the nation's ports is at record pace. To put this in context for the Port of New York and New Jersey, the graph on the screen is showing container volumes for 2021 year-to-date in orange, and the pre-COVID volumes for full year 2019 in blue. There are several takeaways from this graph. Compared to 2019, consistent with the CFO noted, the port is handling close to 19% more total volume. As an aside, not shown on the graph, we were up nearly 24% year-to-date when compared to 2020. We've been experiencing 17 months of strong container volume beginning from the second half of last year. Clearly, life during the COVID pandemic has seen a significant shift in disposable income away from the service economy into the goods economy. Historically, the Port of New York and New Jersey grew at a CAGR of 4% per year, so we're clearly exceeding those volumes. In terms of container demand, especially for imports, we've seen strong growth in commodities such as furniture, home goods, including kitchenware, computers, printers, televisions, and electronics, and perhaps unique to our gateway, wines and spirits. I'll mention at the start, the Port of New York and New Jersey is effectively managing record volumes. This is true even while the demands on berth space, terminal space, and intermodal rail capacity are at their maximums. The same can also be said of truck capacity and chassis that hold the containers on wheels. Indeed, our ability to flex and grow our terminal capacity today is the result of projects and programs that were completed between 2016 and 2020. These programs were both Port Authority-led as well as tenant-led. I would note that our waterways infrastructure was enhanced not only by the deepening of the navigation channels to 50 feet, but also by the raising of the Bayonne Bridge, coupled with deepening of the berths. Today, the Port of New York and New Jersey can accommodate up to 9 ultra-large container ships at berths. Indeed, without these completed projects in our rearview mirror, our port, in fact, would be seeing a backlog of vessels. Our terminal operators made substantial investments as well, and these include new terminal gate infrastructure, as well as in new and larger gantry cranes. In some cases, our terminal operators also raised the height of existing gantry cranes. This is really important because we have seen nearly a 30% increase in the size of vessels greater than 9,000 TEU calling the port. While not necessarily a headline news story, the Port of New York and New Jersey chassis model effectively allowed the container chassis to move mostly off terminal, creating more capacity for containers. Since the start of the pandemic in 2020 and continuing to today, the port stakeholder community have been meeting on a regular basis, sharing information about cargo volume and the demands on the maritime supply chain. Convened by the Port Department, this group of industry leaders flags issues early. One such issue identified early in the pandemic was the need to keep waterfront labor protected. Several early measures included developing our own supply line for PPE, temperature checks at terminals, and COVID manning to maximize physical distancing. Extended gate hours, including Saturdays and working through holidays, has been the practice at the Port of New York and New Jersey for well over a year. I would note, too, since it's been a topical news item in recent days with respect to ports, that the local work rules at the Port of New York and New Jersey are already 24/7 for vessel operations at berth. This is not a new development. It's the standard operating practice at the Port of New York and New Jersey. While terminal capacity is not unlimited, this gateway has been able to utilize and deploy available capacity. At the Staten Island terminal, historically operating below available capacity, container volumes are up 157% this year. Lastly, I would note that our regular dialogue with the railroads has enabled there to be a steady inflow of empty rail cars to the port to support the growth in outbound loaded rail cargo. The railroads have also been metering cargo to several inland hubs to help minimize chronic congestion. Over the past few months, the national news media have been reporting the status of container vessels at anchorage. This has become a daily feature on the internet as well. As of this morning, there are approximately 65 container vessels awaiting berths in Southern California, nearly 22 at the South Atlantic port of Savannah. For the Port of New York and New Jersey, I can report that we have 1 container ship at anchorage. There are a few points that I would make regarding this metric, which we are tracking daily. The first is that while there are maybe vessels at anchor at any given moment, the average wait time has remained low at the Port of New York and New Jersey compared to peer gateway ports. For the month of September, average wait times for vessels that did go to anchorage was 2.7 days, and year-to-date, our average dwell is just under 1.5 days. We did see a spike in vessels in early September, and this is a function of volume, the cadence of inbound vessel, and the high utilization of existing Port of New York and New Jersey container berths. Vessels on a global basis, I should note, are significantly delayed because of bottlenecks across the maritime supply chain. Due to the larger box counts on vessels, ships are staying at berth longer. This is where labor supply and the number of trains deployed against a vessel becomes a key metric for terminal efficiency. I would note that while the demands on our port assets are extreme, the vessels and cargo are moving quite well at the Port of New York and New Jersey. I'd be remiss if I did not mention our port partners who are all contributing to the effective movement of the cargo. This includes our terminal operators, the ILA, Conrail, Norfolk Southern and CSX railroads, the local trucking industry, container depot operators, and chassis providers, as well as the New York Shipping Association. Ports remain a critical component of the broader goods movement supply chain. But ports are just one nodal point in a complex web of interrelated cargo handoffs. There are massive demands being placed on the trucking industry as well as on warehouse and distribution facilities. Bottlenecks have immediate impacts on ports and vice versa. There is a chronic shortage of chassis on a national basis. Labor availability across the supply chain is becoming a systemic issue. We clearly need more truck drivers. We need more warehouse workers. The growth in e-commerce has placed new demands on these industries. Despite all the challenges, I could not be more proud of what we are collectively doing here at the Port of New York and New Jersey to keep the region's cargo moving. That will remain our continued focus. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. Any comments or questions from the commissioners? And Sam, in terms of the projections for the remainder of the year, same pattern?
I think they're going to remain strong, Commissioner.
Okay. And in terms of the shipments and shipped goods coming in, there seems to be some hysteria about the lack of shipments or lack of goods. Does it seem like there's a steady stream still coming, or will there be an interruption like we saw during COVID? I guess it was March, April of last year.
Well, clearly the congestion at other ports, but I would say if the cargo is moving through our port, our gateway, it's going to get to the shelves.
Okay, great. Anybody else? All righty, thank you, Sam. And again, thanks to all the employees, please.
Thank you.
Pass that along. All right, for our speakers program, we have one written statement which will be filed with the transcript of today's board meeting and posted on the Port Authority website. I'll point out that the written statement did not relate to any of the items before the board for approval today. And Jim, have we received any additional comments or statements?
We have not.
Okay. All right, at this point, we're going to proceed with the voting on items from the board's consideration. Each of the respective committee chairs will provide a brief report prior to each of the matters being considered today. As chair of the Committee on Operations, I'll now present one item under the committee's purview. That item would renew a funding agreement with the Alliance for Downtown New York, Inc., the operator of the Lower Manhattan Business Improvement District, which includes a 16-acre World Trade Center. The funding would cover a 10-year period at an initial annual payment of approximately $510,000. Prior to making a motion, I ask the corporate secretary, are there any committee commissioner recusals?
There are not.
Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Chairman O'Toole.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Linford.
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen.
Yes.
Commissioner Eve.
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarbera.
Yes.
Commissioner Martinotti.
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe.
Yes.
Commissioner Menendez.
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson.
Yes.
Commissioner Rosado.
Yes.
All the votes are in order. The item has been approved. This time we turn to Vice Chair. May I have your report, Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chairman. As chair of the Committee on Capital Planning, Execution, and Asset Management, I will now report on two items under the committee's purview. The first item reauthorizes a project to replace past substation number 7 in Jersey City, New Jersey, at a total project cost of $84.3 million. This reflects a project increase of $6.1 million, of which 90% will be refunded by a Federal Transit Administration grant. This increase is attributable to delays experienced while procuring key electrical equipment, which extended the project schedule. Prior to making a motion on this item, I asked the corporate secretary to note any commissioner recusals.
There are no recusals.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, I now request a motion.
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I now request the corporate secretary to call the roll for voting on this item.
Chairman O'Toole.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Linford.
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen.
Yes.
Commissioner Eve.
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarbera.
Yes.
Commissioner Martinotti.
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe.
Yes.
Commissioner Menendez. Commissioner Richardson.
Yes.
Commissioner Rosado.
Yes.
As the votes are in order, this item is approved. The next item would reauthorize a project to replace PATS substation number 9 in Harrison, New Jersey, at a total project cost of $77.1 million. This reflects a project increase of $12.4 million, of which 90% would be refunded by a Federal Transit Administration grant. This increase is also attributable to delays in procuring key electrical equipment, which extended the project schedule. Prior to making a motion on this item, I ask the corporate secretary to note any commissioner recusals.
There are no recusals.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, I now request a motion on this item.
So moved.
Can I have a second on the motion?
Second.
Thank you. I now request the corporate secretary to call the roll for voting on this item.
Chairman O'Toole.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Linford.
Yes,
Commissioner Cohen.
Yes.
Commissioner Eve.
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarbera.
Yes.
Commissioner Martinotti.
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe.
Yes.
Commissioner Menendez.
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson.
Yes.
Commissioner Rosado.
Yes.
as the votes are in order, this item is approved, and I turn the meeting back to Chairman O'Toole.
Thank you, Vice Chair. At this point, we go to Commissioner Menendez, and may I have your report, Robert?
Thank you, Chairman. As Chair of the Committee on Governance and Ethics, I will now report on an item under the committee's purview. The item authorizes the Port Authority's updated policy on reporting misconduct and ensuring protection from retaliation for individuals who make such reports. This policy would replace the 2015 policy and would strengthen it by expanding the range of reports as to which whistleblower protections apply, expanding the definition of what constitutes retaliation in response to a protected report, and emphasizing managers' affirmative obligation to prevent retaliation against reporting employees. Prior to making a motion on this item, I ask the Corporate Secretary to note any commissioner recusals.
There are no recusals.
Do any commissioners have questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, I now request a motion on this item.
So moved.
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
I now request the Corporate Secretary to call the roll for voting on the item.
Chairman O'Toole?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Linford?
Yes,
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Eve?
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarbera?
Yes.
Commissioner Martinotti?
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe?
Yes.
Commissioner Menendez?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosado?
Yes.
As the votes are in order, this item is approved.
Thank you, Commissioner Menendez. The other item I just want to mention, we were going to do a tribute to former Commissioner Ray Pacino. Spoke to Ray yesterday. He couldn't make it today, so we're going to push that recognition either in November, December, whatever fits his schedule. There being no further business, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Here a second? Second. All in favor?
Second. Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. We'll see you in November.